We've lived in this bond bull market for 40 years, falling rates and therefore falling cap rates, and it created a rising tide that made this sort of innovation less important, less valuable. In a world in which rates are flat or even rising, and therefore you have this constant headwind to value creation, you have to find a way to get an edge. And this is one very clear way to get an edge. I think, especially with the advent of Gen AI, where the quality of your AI models are directly tied to the quality of the data behind them, or the relevance of the outputs is tied to the data that's behind them, those firms that are able to assemble large proprietary data sets that they can then train their models on are going to have an edge out in the future. I would have to believe that larger firms with much larger resources are doing the same. Now, the challenge that larger firms have are legacy systems, legacy processes, maybe a bit of, I don't want to say laziness because I don't mean it that way, but a comfort with the status quo that says, well, if it's working, why fix it, right? Personally, this just, since I was a kid, I find fulfillment and innovation. I don't know how else to describe it. And I question always, like, why we do things the way that we do. And maybe to a fault, I always think there's a better way. And oftentimes the current way is the right way. To a fault, I always assume, like my default is the current way is inefficient and can be improved. And then my next step is, okay, what are the alternatives? And I really enjoy, and for many that have worked with me, maybe it can be a little frustrating because I'm always saying, well, why are we doing it this way? And let's do it this other way. And it's like, hey, what we do works. But that's just, it's a personality trait that I have that I really genuinely enjoy finding efficiency, throwing the board up in the air and seeing where the pieces land and repositioning the board in a new way. I remember as a kid, I was constantly rearranging my bedroom, right? It's like a little thing, but I never every 3 weeks, it's like, okay, I need to move my bed in a new place. I need to put my nightstand in a new place. And like, there's gotta be a better way to how my bedroom's set up. And I think about that in everything I do, and not just business. You have a team of partners led by our senior partner, Glenn Lowenstein, that our entire careers has been about throwing off the status quo and pushing for the next level of that. Glenn was a pioneer in kind of data-driven real estate. One of the first to the ideas around mixed use and how a collection of uses combined can create a value that's greater at the whole than the sum of the parts. But Brandon brought to baseball, Brandon's one of our partners at Stablewood, brought to baseball a new approach to tracking pitches, right? And help build World Series winning baseball teams. Pam has just had a passion about helping startups put in place the systems that they need to excel. Gert, our CTO, is always on the front edge of tech. So I think it's Glenn, our senior partner, assembling a team of people who are always looking to, we call ourselves a next generation real estate investment firm. It's like, what's ahead rather than looking back. What's most memorable, what's most impactful about my time at Cornell was the energy of the conversations that were constant, consistent with my peers and with others at Cornell. I've missed that since I've left, to be frank, right? With coworkers, with colleagues in the industry, we go to lunch and we talk about sports, we talk about food, we talk about whatever else, cities that are interesting. But at Cornell, there was this energy around talking real estate, talking the future of real estate. I'm excited to talk about data and technology today because that's something I'm passionate about. And it seemed like every interaction I had at Cornell with my peers was rich and deep. And not that there's anything wrong with talking about restaurants and sports teams, but I came here because I'm passionate about real estate. And so to find this cohort of 25, 50 people that were equally as nerdy and obsessed with this asset type was really rewarding. I would argue that most of the skills that are, call it the future-ready skills, aren't necessarily taught in the classroom. They're not at that stage yet. They're not mature enough. I think today, we're sitting 2023, certainly skills you could have learned in the classroom are around data analysis, data aggregation, data cleaning, data structuring. Really big data type skills I've found to be immensely helpful in my career, and I think will only be more important looking forward. But over the last 12 months, we've really seen Gen AI come to the forefront of our minds. It's very real. It is already disrupting how we do things, and I think will disrupt how we invest in the coming years. And so those are skills that aren't taught in the classroom yet because they're still developing. Like the tools themselves are changing weekly. I went on a cruise last week, and I come back and I was just blown away by how much had changed in 1 week in the Gen AI space. Some are taking this approach like, oh, I'm gonna wait and see what happens. I think that you're gonna be left behind. If you're a student right now, I think you're gonna be left behind if you take that approach. And so it's better you go into an organization or you go into an interview and you know all of the large language models that are currently out there right now and in what stage they are. You know all of the image diffusion models that are out there. You understand how language is going to change, how voice is going to change, how video is going to change. You understand how those models are built. Maybe you can train your own model. And now with custom GPTs, you can do that to a certain extent, right? And maybe you train your own model for an interview. Maybe you train a model that helps you prepare for the interview. The point is just an intellectual curiosity around these things. You don't have to become a machine learning expert, although understanding machine learning is going to be important looking forward. You don't have to be an AI. I think you need to be an AI expert in terms of knowledge. I don't know if you have to be able to build your own large language models necessarily, but certainly know how to train a model is going to be key. But the fundamentals will never change. What makes real estate valuable? What doesn't, right? How future cash flows or how you might forecast future cash flows and the supply-demand dynamics that change what those future cash flows may be. Like all those fundamentals persist, but the technology and the data that's going to influence that is key. Dwayne Stiller, Cornell grad, shout out to Dwayne, has this philosophy around like knowing your market better than anyone else. I think what he's really describing is just a data collection approach to real estate in a very manual way. Actually, if you think about CoStar, that's all CoStar was let's send people out into the world and ask a lot of questions and collect that data. And so anyone can take that approach to data. Beyond that, though, there's also some interesting publicly available data sets that aren't used by real estate professionals necessarily. Finding ways to use non-real estate data in a way that is applicable to real estate is another alternative. You know, the thing about free data is everyone has access to it. And so for me to come up with a data set on the spot right now that someone else doesn't have, it's not gonna happen, I don't think, right? Or at least the traditional free data sets. With that said, we're sitting here in College Town, Ithaca, and there are a couple hundred buildings in a few blocks here. And a student in an afternoon could build their own data set on the College Town. And I don't think there's any, I can't imagine online, there's very many people have produced data sets on College Town. How many square feet? Who are the users? What's the nature of the users? So the breakdown of retail to office, publicly owned versus privately owned, right? All of that, someone who was interested in College Town could put together the most comprehensive data set on College Town. Now, most don't, because I would imagine some of the developers in this area probably have done something similar to that, maybe not. That's the thing. I mean, a lot of them, maybe not. And so there's a very manual process that anyone could take to produce their own proprietary data sets that wouldn't cost them anything other than their own time. 2. And I mean no disrespect to CoStar, but it's a very, very different space. Again, the big challenge is we see a sliver of the data in real estate that the public investors have access to, and most of the most valuable data is controlled by private firms that have either spent the time and the money to mine that data themselves, and it's highly valuable to them, and so they don't have a lot of incentive to share it with anyone. And in a private market like real estate, that's one way in which one gets their edge. And so CoStar certainly plays a role. We are a CoStar client. They have important data that tells us what the rest of the market knows. But I think that's step one in a 5-step process to coming to conclusions around a property and ultimately making an investment decision. The answer to the question is going to vary by person. So it's hard to give a broad answer. I don't want someone to hear that. I don't want someone who's hyper passionate about resort real estate to hear this answer and change their mind, okay? But if you are one that isn't entirely sure of what path you want to take, find the largest firm with the broadest mandate and go there, right? You get a generalist approach to real estate, you get a lot of reps, and that will allow you to become a semi-specialist in a lot of things, and then you can specialize further from there. So that's just a broad suggestion. If you know what you want to do, then find the firm that best aligns with your interest and specialize immediately. In fact, I say this a lot when I'm talking to students. The sooner you can specialize, the sooner you know what path you want to take, the faster you're going to get to the earnings that you want. So the downside to a generalist approach is it's a slow start. The upside is that you avoid getting seasoned, pigeonholed, if you will, into a path that isn't a great fit, right? You take that resort real estate approach. You spend 3 years at a firm developing beach communities, and then find out, well, actually what I really want to do is industrial development or whatever that may be, office asset management, and now you have to start all over again.